Hello and welcome to another scrapbooking process video. Today I'm going to be mixing up New Stash, which is this crepe paper gingham garden collection, which I've been using for the past couple of weeks. And I'm going to be pulling in some Old Stash as well, which is the Pink Fresh Studio Felicity collection. That's what it's called, Felicity. And at first I was going to use that zigzag pattern that I had picked out from the layout that I just did before this. I'm still live streaming, so if you checked out my last video, which was called Finally Bliss, this was scrapped in the same session as that one. And I'm going to be using this other Pink Fresh Studio background paper, and I'm going to be combining it with items from the Gingham Garden collection. As you can see, I'm just kind of flipping through and seeing what speaks to me. I love that paper with the plants on it. Oh my goodness. And so I've just grabbed a handful of different sheets of paper here, some of which are scraps from other layouts that I've done. Thought about using that yellow paper as a frame around my background, but I think I've decided not to do that. And I know that I want to use that navy blue paper. I had pulled it out for my last layout and I wanted to use it as a matting for this photo. I haven't even picked my photo yet. I'm just looking at what I have here in my little collection of photos that I have yet to scrap. So here's a photo of my family and our international student who's part of our family this year. And we're all at Cape Enrage in New Brunswick. We took a little road trip in September and it was really fun. So I wanted to do that. Now I had an idea for how to use this background paper. I love this design. Love how it's all these neutral rectangles and then we have just this one vertical line of colored rectangles. Really, really love this. And so I've decided to outline the colored rectangles just to give them a little bit more presence on the page and to give them my own kind of sketchy look that I tend to have on my pages. And I'm going to do something else to make these little blocks of color stand out from the page, but that will come a little bit later. So for now, I'm just going to outline them, but stay tuned to the end because eventually I'm going to do something even more interesting with that background paper. So let's grab that piece of 8.5 by 11 Night of Navy cardstock from Stampin' Up! And I'm going to just mat this photo using my Stampin' Up! Trimmer to take off the extra paper here. Oops, I trimmed it too wide and then I trimmed it too narrow. So let's give that a try again. There we go. That's a little bit better. Of course, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I wanted to fix that up. I like to use my ruler for most of my paper trimming needs, and so that gives me a little bit of an extra texture on my page. It gives a bit of interest because it just gives a little bit of torn edge look, but I don't like to overdo it. So that's why I use my ruler. My ruler kind of keeps it all in line. So I'm going to mat it onto that other piece of pattern paper. And then this one, I thought that it was interesting, this little jag of paper that's over here. I even left the designer strip on the edge of it there. And I just liked how this looked. So I'm going to incorporate it into my layers. It's not going to be hugely obvious by the time the page is done, but I really like how it looks. Played around with maybe rotating the paper, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to use it this way. I would love to use some of this chipboard, which I just got. I bought this chipboard from a local scrapbooking store. I got everything else from the Gingham Garden collection from scrapbook.com. And I like this camera because we're all posing for a photo, so it's a good place to use a camera icon. And I have stickers. I have almost everything from this collection. I really loved everything about it, so I ended up buying and buying and buying. Went a little overboard on this collection. I don't know how I'm ever going to use all of this product, but I'm going to try. I love this frame, so I'm going to use that for sure, and I'm going to layer it, and I'm going to actually use that frame in 2 different places. I'm just picking out anything that goes with either the color scheme that I have in mind or that's already going on the page, or anything that fits with my theme, which is, road trip, a little bit of discovery, adventure, travel, those sorts of ideas and concepts. But most of them are just kind of neutral embellishments with flowers and stuff on them, but that's perfectly fine too. This is one of my favorite parts, just exploring the die cut pieces and thinking about all the different ways that supplies can come together to make something really fun and interesting on your page. I do have these chipboard pieces that I got at Crop and Create. They were a prize, and I'm not going to use them today, but I try to keep them in mind when I'm scrapbooking because I don't want them, I don't want to forget about them. Now this tag, I'm really not using it as a tag. You can't even see that it is a tag. So I think I thought about outlining it there, but I decided not to. And what I'm doing here is I'm basically looking for that photo so I can find the date, because I want to use a roller date stamp here on this little label that's right underneath of the camera. It's a little blue label from the die cuts. And the date was September 17th, 2022. And so I'm going to use my roller date stamp, and it is a slick surface. These die cuts are shiny. And so I used Stays On ink so that it would stay on my label and not smear everywhere. And then I will put my die cut or my chipboard camera above it and layer the die cut rainbow behind that. And I like how that looks. It could have been, there's a bunch of different ways that you could layer these things together. And I like how you can see the tag peeking out behind either side of the rainbow embellishment. I decided to rescue the top part of this frame since I'm only using the bottom part of it. And that way I have the option to use the top someplace else, either in this layout or in another layout. I'm going to pop up the word discover just to set it apart from some of the other layered embellishments that are around it. That allows it just casts a really subtle gray shadow behind it, and it just emphasizes it off of the rest of the things that are on the page. I went to my stash and grabbed this twine. I have no idea where this twine is from, but it's like a silky, thready kind of string, and I really, really love it. I wish I had more of it because it's really fun to work with. It adds so much texture to that tag, and I like that it's a neutral color, so I'll be on the lookout for that. Now, I wanted to do some outlining on this, and my first impulse was to use my favorite blue or purpley Pip pen, but that will not do well on a slick surface, so I grabbed a Bic writer pen, I think it's called, or marker pen, and it is a slick surface pen as well. It's not my favorite brand of slick surface, but I couldn't find my other ones. I like to use a fine point Sharpie pen, but I think somebody borrowed it and it didn't make its way back to my scrap room yet. I will layer the top part of this frame right there just for a little bit of added interest, and it also kind of just finishes off that cluster over there. I like for something interesting to be off subtly in the background of a cluster, and so that little frame piece does that job. I'm going to use these terrace thickers. These are part of the Gingham Garden collection from Crepe Paper that I've been using for most of this layout, and I really love the subtlety of this font. I like that it's this really washed out looking wood grain, and we spent a lot of time this day walking on worn out piers and sets of stairs and whatnot, so I thought that it was a good font to use for this particular layout as well. And I'm just going to put the word Enrage in the sky on the photo, and then I'll put the word Cape above it. I'm just going to line up these letters using my grid mat underneath of the wax paper. This is just regular kitchen wax paper that I'm using here. I've used wax paper for my thickers for many, many years as a way to try them out and move different titles around on your page. It's really good if you're doing a long title so that you can really play around with where each of the words are going to go. But as you can see, it's even handy on a shorter title like this one. The nice thing about putting a title like this, especially a blocky title, up on the edge of your photo is that you can just use the top edge of your photo to align all of your letters. So I just did that right there. You saw me doing that. And now I can play around with the placement of cape, but I'm ultimately going to decide to make it be left justified with the word Enrage. And now here comes my enamel dot album again. And I'm going to put a couple of enamel dots every here and there. And I'm going to use a lot of enamel dots on my background. This is how I'm going to emphasize that little stack, or it's a big stack of rectangles that are on my background paper. I am picking enamel dots that are the same colors as some of those rectangles. And I'm going to place little sets of them. And some of them are too big for the rectangles, so I'm going to kind of work out how I want them to look. They're not always going to be sets of 3, but there will be sets of 3 mostly, and a couple of sets of 2 every here and there. I just basically want to emphasize this vertical nature of the background paper. And I think that adding these enamel dots, they add a tiny bit of contrast, but because they're the same color, it's not too distracting. And they add texture galore because they're shiny and smooth, which is very different than the background paper, which is matte. That Pink Fresh Studio Felicity collection, the paper is so thick, and it's really like a printed cardstock, really. It's not really a paper. It's beautiful. Love, love, love working with it. I don't know why I don't use Pink Fresh Studio more often. I should use more. And I'm kind of limited by the colors that I have in my stash. And, I could go back to my book and try to find more colors, but I feel like I've got enough colors to make this work here. I just want to make sure that it's balanced. I don't want it to be too much of a pattern. I don't want it to be predictable or symmetrical, but I still want it to, look like it fits. So there we go. And I didn't even use the exact same color on each of those rectangles. Every once in a while, there's 2 of the same color and then a different one, and that's okay too. Now I'm going to also put a few of these enamel dots in the layout itself, so amongst the layers. And I'm going to use quite a bit of restraint there. I don't want so many enamel dots in the layers that it's detracting from the fact that I've used these enamel dots to emphasize this vertical line in the background. Now I'll just put all of those away. This layout came together super fast, particularly in contrast to the one that I did the same night before on this same live stream, because that other one involved custom die cut letters and layering them, and I didn't have the right glue, and it was a bit of it was a long process. Whereas this one, boom, came together super fast. Now it's not quite done, it's almost done, but I felt like it needed something right here on the bottom of this frame. It looks like a Polaroid frame. So I grabbed this little phrase stamp from my stash. It just says, "I believe in adventure." And I'm going to use Stays On ink for this as well because it's also one of those shinier die cut embellishments. And I like that. It just fills in that space that was otherwise blank, looking like it needed a little something something. And I'm also going to add just a couple of little puffy stickers on my background. I just wanted something on the background. And so the tiny little hearts and stars that are in this puffy sticker set, this is from the Gingham Garden collection again. And they just, they just bring the page together as the last final touch. Thanks so much to my folks who support me over on Patreon. They help make this channel happen, so big, giant thanks to them. And thanks to you for watching as well. Here are the photos of this one. You get to see how it looks overall, as well as a few close-ups of this page. So here you get to see how this cluster of embellishments look, and look at that twine. Isn't it cute? And it's soft and silky too. And then these enamel dots, I find that they really add to the background. I'm always looking for ways to use those enamel dots. I tend to use them too sparingly. And there's the title, which I adore. I love that font. And there's the second cluster of embellishments. So thanks so much for watching this process video. Let me know if you have any comments in the comments section below. Take care and have a really great scrappy week.